Summer's almost here. We gotta get going on this Jeep. So here's the issue. I got all these flat panels, and they're not supposed to look flat. It's supposed to look like this one, which I've already done a little work on. And I did this without a metal brake. How did I do it, you ask? Well, I'll give you a hint. It's the vise. I used the vise. And I used a couple other things, which I'm going to show you. But since there's so much metal folding to do, I'm just going to do a couple of panels to show you how it's done. And then I'm just going to do all the rest of them while I'm all alone. Here's a panel that I rolled beads on in the bead roll last video, whatever it was. And here's the one that had the Z or N. So basically this is a mirror of this. And I'm going to bend all of these flanges on the end, primarily using the vise, which will not give me a great edge, and then I will true it up on the hammer. And later I'll show you this panel, which has to have a crease here, and because this sticks out in both directions, I can't use the vise. But I have a different method of doing that. Those are the two I'm going to shape, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the steering and how I'm going to fix that. Oh, but before we begin, this is kind of a side fender piece. Like here's the flat fender, and there's a fender that goes under it. This I did in the vise, it's just a gentle bend. And then this, ooh, it's a curve. How did I do a curve? It's easy. I clamped it in the vise with a socket. Socket like this, kind of this was sticking straight up, clamped it in the vise like this, bent it over the socket, moved it, bent it over the socket, moved it, bent it over the socket, and then just kind of trued it up so it looked halfway decent. There's still more finished work to be done, but, you know, socket works as kind of a bending anvil. That was a tip given to me. It was not my idea. I'm not that clever. Anyway, on to the actual shaping today. So, here's the other panel, here's this panel. It's got to be a mirror image. And this has an angle on the back, so the angle on the back, so these will be parallel this way. This bends up, this has to bend down. Now if you remember a long time ago, I put little indents in that using a scribe, put it and then I hit a hammer. So I got little dots along the actual crease. And I'm going to use those to line it up in the vise jaws here. You know, I said I did that. I can't see them. I just can't see them at all. I know, draw with a Sharpie. There we go. Now, oh, nope, that's crooked. Fail, mistakes were made. So this fold is going to be wider than my vise, but I'm going to get around that by doing this. Clamp in the vise, just using hand pressure here. Bend it over a bit, unclamp, move, clamp, bend it over a bit. And so on, back and forth, until I have pretty much a 90-degree bend. Although you might notice already, this is not a very defined bend. There we go, just crank it over. Go big or go home, right? But I already am home. That was fast. Okay, pretty much a 90-degree bend. But this is not a sharp crease like you would expect on thin sheet in a metal brake. It's sort of gentle and rounded over. So how do you fix that? That's right, hammers. Yeah, there we go. And there you have it, a pretty sharp bend. Cool, huh? Now bashing into it with a hammer did not give it a perfect finish. This is kind of, see, it's slightly bumpy. I used a flat hammer with no crown on it, but it's still not all that pretty. But I've decided I can live with that a lot more than I can live with spending whatever amount of money it costs to buy a metal brake. The next folds, you see, have to go the opposite way. So this, fold up towards me. And you can see this is not cut in a 90-degree bend. It's slightly more acute, that one's slightly more obtuse, but when they fold over, they're all supposed to meet. Here's on the finished part. See, they meet. This is bent slightly less than 90 degrees. And that's because this whole panel doesn't sit straight up, it sits at an angle. Wow, that's a little bit warped, that panel. I can live with that. And I really think I forgot to put the divots in this one. That was stupid of me. Well, let's be honest, not the stupidest thing I've done. Not even the stupidest thing I've done on this YouTube channel. Oh, that's on the wrong side now. I have to bend towards me. Drew the line on the wrong side, people. Ever watch yourself make something and think, wow, I'm an idiot. How does any of this work out for me? Well, I have the benefit of recording all of this, so I can watch it in detail later. Ta-da! Now here's the tricky part. I have to put this in and bend it to meet up with this. But this cannot be clamped in the brake. So this is the problem I've seen with most metal brakes, the cheap ones anyway. You can't actually fold an edge and then fold an edge 90 degrees to it touching it. You need something called, I think it's called a pan brake, that has like leaves that stick down so you can actually butt folds up, kind of like that. However, my vice brake does not have that issue. In fact, I can use this fold here to sit on top of the vise so I line up the fold perfectly. Except for this part, which I'm eyeballing. And voila! Not quite working. I just got to bend this over a little more and then we'll be good. How am I going to bend it over a little more? There, a little gentle hammering and that's a lot closer. I'll have to true up pretty much all of this before I do the final welding and assembly, so I'm happy with that for now. And there we go, one completed panel, sort of. And it should be a mirror image of this one. Hey, look at that. I didn't screw it up. So this is slightly different, and that's because this sticks out too far in both ways to fit in the vise. So I have to use some special tools, which include this piece of angle iron, these two vice grips, and this chunk of wood. Now to assemble this contraption, you need to do the following. Line up the piece of wood with the bottom of your cut. Now this is 1.5 inches wide, which explains why I made the ends of the beads 1.5 inches away from the fold. I was planning on doing this method for all of the bends, and then I figured the vise thing is just so much easier. You can't bend the whole curve all in one go like this one, but it was just easier. Or lazier or something. Now, actually, important to note, this is a warped piece of wood. It sticks up in the middle. So I stick that up, so when I clamp on the ends, that pushes up in the middle and you get a consistent, or more consistent clamp. This wood, by the way, is hickory. I've mentioned hickory a lot, and that's because hickory is freaking tough. It'll even put like oak to shame. It's so tough. The manliest of the hardwoods. Not quite, there's manlier ones out there probably. Okay, must stop talking about wood as manly before I make a wood joke. Now here's where the vice grips come in. These are clamped on opposite sides of the metal. Obviously you need like 12 arms for this, but since I only have 2, I'll just have to make do here. Oh, then I gotta hold it while I gotta loosen this. Awesome, go pinky finger. There, that side clamped. And ta-da, you're ready to go. Now the way I would have bent these, so I would clamp it and then slip, pretend this is a little flange, slip that down in the vise, and then I can grab these two vice grips and bend, and it looks very much like a metal brake. But I can't do that. So what I have to do now, well, I gotta flip this over, clamp this whole contraption to the bench. It's gonna get a little complicated, but remember, I'm working with what I got here. Clamp this down and bend this up. No, wait. Down. I'm glad I looked first. Okay. Bend it down. You can bend it all at once. And now for the camera angle I probably should have started with. It's very important that all of these be clamped down nice and tight, because when you start hammering, it's going to want to push the wood back. So kind of gently. Oh, that didn't do anything. Harder. Yeah, there's the ticket. That worked a little better. You know, I thought this was a flat hammer, but it has a very slight crown to it, so that's ever so slightly bumpy. And bingo! I think I bent it slightly too far. Ta-da! And now for that moment. I think this went, yeah. This goes there-ish, and this goes here-ish. These aren't the right clamps for this, but they do work. Also spring clamps. Useful spring clamps. Wow, there is some serious truing up work to be done on these folds. But see, that's kind of like the battery area in the front. And then this is the fender. And it goes on, where's the other fender? Where'd it go? And then this piece goes in kind of under there. And then this is like here. See, that's starting to look vaguely like a Jeep. Yes, I am very happy with it so far. I got to true up all of the work that I've done so far, but you can almost see it Jeep, as if Jeep were a verb. Wow, this corner needs a lot of work, but I'm happy with that. Now I just have to do this kind of folding work on all the rest of the parts. Now for the steering, here's the steering thing. I have removed it from the actual steering other thing, which is over there on the floor. I have to move this top down 2 inches, so this is 2 inches. I'm just going to cut all of that off. That'll leave me this spine down the middle, so it'll kind of give me the right spacing, and then I'll just reinforce it with square tubing-ish, maybe some sheet. I don't know, this is all very much in the figure out as you go kind of method of planning, but I'm not too worried about this anymore now that I've looked at it. And the steering parts themselves, they come apart and they still work. Oh no, falling apart. Lost structural integrity. Okay, no, they still work. So not real worried about this part of the build anymore. So there you have it. Jeep is starting to Jeep. Pretty soon, maybe it'll even work. Not real soon though. Actually, I've never tested the motors or any of the switches. That may be a problem. Paul Frederick says, I wanted to see your metal brake. I have making one of those on my to-do list. Well, now you've seen mine. Might I suggest not making mine? It was a little bit too janky. Mike Doherty says, Paul, watch this laughing my head off at your tool rant. Sounds like a severe dose of tool envy. What are you talking about? I never have tool envy. Ever. I'm being sarcastic. Lauren Shymansky says, the poor cat. Don't use cats as sandpaper. Use them as hats. I don't know. My cat's kind of overweight. I think if I put him on my head, I'd end up with some spinal damage. Also, his claws might have something to say about him being on my head.